Very good morning to all our viewers from this part of the world, and good evening to all our viewers from the other part of the world. Today we have with us one of the top minds who has been working in the space of sustainability and AI. He was recognized with the North America for the Regional Award for his leadership at SAP's 1 Billion Lives Innovation Initiative. He has also led a value prototyping team for about a decade, driving innovation in supply chain and AI. He holds a PhD from University of Hamburg, Germany, and has completed certifications on AI and deep learning from Stanford, MIT, and other leading universities. Let us all welcome Christian Batzlaff. He's a Chief Sustainability Solution Advisor to SAP. Welcome, Christian.
Thank you, Harsha. Thanks for the nice introduction.
Thank you for joining us, Christian. It has been a very interesting journey from what we see that you've led. Before I start the technical questions, I would like to understand your walk of life and why did you get into sustainability and ESG?
Sure, thanks a lot. Yeah, so why I moved into sustainability, I had a lot of different roles at SAP, more technical, and you elaborated on some of them in value prototyping, working with customers on their supply chain initiatives mainly. Um, but also kind of I wanted to do something which had a kind of a more of an impact. Seeing climate change here right in front of my house where I live, I realized that I wanted to take my skills and the tools we have at SAP to really kind of make a difference when it comes to sustainability and fighting climate change. So that's why took a little bit of a pause and went to University of Cambridge, made a certificate there on sustainability, and then within SAP, kind of moved into the role of solution advisor in the sustainability space.
That's great and very inspiring to see that. Now, how are you embedding sustainability into the core enterprise systems globally, and especially when you're talking about supply chain as well?
Yeah, so sustainability also became part of our SAP's core strategy, right? We do not see sustainability as a side activity, which is only focused on reporting or just bit driven by compliance requirements. We really want to embed sustainability in our and also our customers' core business processes in our products, customer products. So also in the corporate strategy. So if you look at sustainability, it's a wide area, right? You can look at different regulations which are out there. You can look at carbon reporting, but you can also look at things like dangerous goods management, packaging requirements, workplace safety. So a broad list of areas which all fall into this big topic of sustainability. And very often the same data are used in different contexts, right? It's therefore important that we have a consolidated sustainability data foundation, which provides the same data for different consumers. And then the next step, what we do is to build carbon accounting and reduction mechanisms, right, directly into the processes, whether it's procurement, supply chain, or even financial processes, so that we can make sustainability and carbon reduction concrete when, for instance, designing a product, right? Looking into how can I embed recyclability into the design already? How can I make sure that I can take the parts of the product, separate them easily so that I can improve recyclability? When it comes to supply chain planning, how do we include carbon into our supply chain plan? So that we not only optimize cost and lead times, but that we reduce the footprint of the supply plan. So it's really important that we embed sustainability into the business processes because no company becomes sustainable without having the business become sustainable. So that's key, and that's what we try to support our customers with, and also live inside of SAP ourselves.
That's very interesting. How can a digital platform like SAP, which is used globally by so many companies, enable real-time, transparent, and accountable sustainable supply chains? Because that's a huge gap that we have seen. So, what are how do you all execute it?
So one of things in sustainability, it's all about data, right? It's data, data, data. So there's a huge data source available to customers, which is their ERP system. It typically contains all the data about procurement, about manufacturing, business travel, and so on. So leveraging this data is key. And of course, there are other data sources like supplier data. So engaging with suppliers using software which supports that, that business network software, for instance, to exchange data with suppliers, exchange emission factors from suppliers. This is key, and cloud solutions help with that, right? Leveraging the existing data in the ERP system, but also being able to collaborate with the business network and tap into other data sources. So already mentioned, right? So collaboration with suppliers is key to really kind of decarbonize the whole supply chain. And so this is also not only for decarbonization, right? Also for other regulations like UFLPA, EUDR. So all of these regulations require collaboration with suppliers. For this, it's also important to be able to have trust. So, for example, if a supplier shares their carbon footprint, they need to have trust that their competitors are, calculating the footprint the same way, so that they are not in a competitive disadvantage by maybe reporting a higher value just because they are calculated differently. So trust is really important, so that we can create this collaboration across the supply chain, gather the data, and then making sure that we decarbonize the whole supply chain. AI, and it's always like seconds, right? That in any kind of conversation, where at some point we move into AI, and I can really kind of help here quite a lot with the data, right? With making sure that the data are correct. And I assume we will talk about that a little bit further
Yeah.
down, when we continue
Sounds.
the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, so clean data fabric is really required, and the AI can really kind of also help here to provide reliable applications, because AI also relies on good data.
Yeah. Now, as you mentioned about the supply chain, and you're also enabling and empowering your value chain down there, how do you ensure that? Because scope 3 emission is usually a gray area. So how do you ensure when the decarbonizing for the global supply chain, including scope 3, is integrated well, and you can get the appropriate, because that's like from vendors, even the vendors have their other vendors. So how do you integrate that global supply chain and decarbonizing them?
So, first of all, already mentioned, right? Like trust is really important in the collaboration and the sharing of data, and data are really important to have the basis for decarbonization. Um, there are external standards out there, like WBCSD Pact standard or Catena X standard in automotive industry, which we use also, and which are really trying to make sure that data is comparable, and calculated in the same way and shared in the same way. Working through industry consortiums is also key here, right? So that a certain industry, like automotive, for instance, agrees on a standard of how to calculate how to share carbon data, so that this trust gets created, right? So engaging with the consortiums and the consortium themselves, embracing decarbonization is key. But a lot of things is driven by regulations. You see a lot of regulations in the European Union, but also here in the US. But that only gets us so far. Ultimately, what needs to be there has to be a business value. right? What we see in companies who do invest in decarbonization efforts, that the ability to charge a premium, for instance, for low carbon products is really driving the business value, and then it's also driving the ability for those companies to invest in decarbonization efforts.
Yeah.
Just doing that because it's the right thing to do, that will not happen. The business value has to be there and has to be shown for the lines of business to really also kind of sign up for it.
Yeah. Now, as you are mentioning about the decarbonization, I would like to re-emphasize on the usage of AI and data analytics to transform the sustainability decision making. I would also like to ask you, because you have an experience in Europe as well as in the US. So you have exposure of both the countries. How is it faring since you mentioned about the governance and the regulations?
Yeah, well, let me first go back quickly to the AI, right?
Yeah.
So AI and data analytics are very powerful tools, right, to really kind of significantly enhance supply chain decision making and supply chain. And as I said earlier, it's all about data. It's about clean data, good data that will also prevent AI hallucination issues, which might be there. So that it's important that the AI is really grounded in the right data. So when you look at traditional data analytics, you can get a lot of insights there in terms of, what are the biggest maybe carbon drivers in my finished goods. It's very similar to what is the biggest cost driver for finished goods. So you can do that with carbon as well. Then you have, let's so-called, traditional AI like machine learning scenarios like predictive maintenance, right? Where you can avoid production outages by making sure that that you look into a compressor, for instance, and then you identify that higher electricity is used, so you might have to go for maintenance or exchange a compressor. At the same time, if you do that, the higher electricity will result in a higher carbon footprint. You can prevent that as well. So so a lot of different scenarios which you can have here by using AI. When you look at risk, sustainability risk management, and AI agents come into play here, right? Can really help you to manage the risk, identify risks, and then ultimately pass it on to a new agent, which might then go through a lot of alternative calculations, right? So maybe there's a supplier risk and you might want to look at the alternative supplier. And you can pass it on to an agent, could look into way more alternatives, and then once selected, maybe automatically pass it on to a new agent, which asks the new supplier for a quote. So a lot of options here from the agents. You also asked me about Europe and United States. So
Yeah.
Europe has very comprehensive regulatory frameworks, right? You have heard about like CSRD framework, UDR, PPWR, and all of these regulations require detailed sustainability disclosures, due diligence on human rights, environmental impacts, and supply chains. The US environmental regulatory framework is more fragmented. So we have federal regulations from the EPA, like the Clean Water Act or the Endangered Species Act, but many other regulations are also on the state level. So, for instance, extended producer responsibility regulations, so-called EPR for packaging. We have them in 7 states now, like Oregon, Colorado, California, and some others. But they also differ in detail, right? Although they all have the same goal, the details might be different. So that makes it difficult also for companies to comply. And again, here, a common data set and then a software which can basically look at all the data sets and then calculate based on the state-specific regulation is really kind of helpful and reduce a lot of work, which customers would obviously do otherwise maybe on Excel spreadsheet. California, we also have the climate disclosure regulation, SB 253, coming up this year. So it's all more like on the state level, whether it's in Europe, it's either on Europe-wide or on the country level. When you look at culture, in Europe, I feel that sustainability is more integrated into the corporate strategy. It's more like really looked into like from a long-term perspective, from a long-term profitability and risk management. In the US, the general thinking is way more short-term, right? So it's really more about the short-term financial performance of the company. So that also obviously drives behavior. However, we also see a lot of investment in the US in green factories, for instance. So companies who have long-term strategy for decarbonization of their supply chain, and these investments are not going away based on maybe more short-term political streams.
Yeah.
So they are still there. So we still see a lot of interest also in our solutions to really kind of help customers to strategically decarbonize.
So,
Um,
uh,
Coming back to Europe, right? A lot of these bigger regulations like CSRD, like CBAM, they have a global reach, right? And also impact companies in other parts of the world, like in the US or in India,
in India.
who are selling into the European market,
Yeah.
right? So we see that a lot of impact there, a lot of customers coming to us because even though they are not in Europe, but they still need to comply.
Yeah. So since one is I wanted to get few names on the AI agents that y'all are using and the technologies that y'all are using. Two is since SAP is a global platform, it's used across. So what are the initiatives that it is taking in order to bridge the regulatory compliances and in the ecosystem? Not only in Europe, US, but also in other parts of the world. For example, as we mentioned, India, many of the companies out there is using your software.
Yeah, so we are, as a company, we are on the one hand side, we are engaged with some of the regulatory authorities, right? So working with them. So, for instance, we are part of the WBCSD kind of discussions about the PACT standard, how to exchange data. We are here in the US. We work with the carbon lines for the EPR regulation. We work very closely in the automotive industry with the Catena X and have one of the first certified software suppliers there. So we really try to be embedded kind of into this ecosystem to help drive these regulations and then being able to provide solutions globally in a short time frame so that companies can adopt them and be compliant. But again, our goal is really how to go beyond compliance and help companies to really be more sustainable, decarbonize the whole supply chain, and the compliance aspect and the regulatory aspect and the regulatory reporting aspect is an outcome. But we want to go way beyond that. So where you can see that is, for instance, like a lot of regulations require you like a real yearly report. But cannot really decarbonize your supply chain if you only get the state of the supply chain once a year. So
Yeah.
that has to be a continuous effort. So therefore, the continuous collection of data, the continuous visibility into what is the status of the carbon footprint basically is key here, and that's kind of what we provide and help our customers with.
Yeah. In spite of all the tools that we have, including the AI and the data analytics, there are still questions when it comes to achieving end-to-end visibility in the supply chain. How do you see what are the can we bridge this particular gap as well as work towards achieving the net zero goals of the respective companies as well as the countries?
Yeah, so I mentioned data, right? So data is kind of really kind of the main topic for any kind of visibility, and the limited access to high quality emission data is obviously is is key, right? So that we can get high quality data. Many companies rely on secondary data sources, so like spend-based emission factors, because they don't have the primary measured data. And this reliance can obscure decarbonization opportunities, and therefore also kind of limit accuracy. So influencing upstream suppliers is a major challenge, as you mentioned, right? Many companies have a very highly fragmented supplier base, and they might even also lack negotiation power with their suppliers. So this fragmentation makes it very difficult to engage suppliers in sustainability initiatives, especially when companies are not major customers for many of their suppliers.
Yeah.
Um, the perceived or real cost of decarbonization can limit action. So companies are often concerned about the green premium they have to pay, or which is associated with, for instance, purchasing low carbon products and services, or the potential increase in capital expenditures, which is needed maybe to support innovation or redesign products. So low internal awareness of how to abate emissions and limited time resources are really a lot of high barriers for decarbonization. And many companies struggle with the organizational setup where sustainability is still a separate entity and not really embedded in the business process. So from an organizational standpoint, but also from a technology standpoint, where the data and systems used by sustainability teams are distinct and not integrated with the core ERP system, which runs the day-to-day integration, that's kind of really creates a problem. And that's kind of where we need to help customers kind of to bring this together using those systems which I already have instead of Excel spreadsheets, and integrating with network solutions, which are available to kind of really share data automatically, and in a standard way.
Yeah, yeah. That's very interesting. Now, I have a last question for you. I know that we are running short of time, but what is the advice that you would give for companies looking to build resilient, sustainable, and tech-enabled global supply chain?
Yeah, so thinking about that, so maybe there are kind of multiple things, right? So first of all, leverage emerging technology, right? Use technologies like AI, IoT, to enhance your supply chain transparency and efficiency. So these technologies can help track and reduce environmental impacts and really improve traceability across the whole supply chain. If you have not done that yet, consider diversifying, diversifying sourcing strategies, right, to reduce dependency on single region suppliers. So sustainability is also a lot of resilience, right, and being able to adopt to on risk. So climate change, floods, droughts. So it's really important to maybe therefore diversity so supplier base, so that you also can source raw materials from maybe other regions, which that increases resilience against all kind of these kind of disruptions, which I was referring to. Then what we talked earlier is collaborate closely with the suppliers, right, to ensure that they adhere to sustainability standards, and also continuously improve their practices. This might include training, adoption of innovative practices, participation in initiatives, and then really kind of maybe also setting standards, right, for environmental and social topics. I talked about the integration of sustainability into core businesses. So again, no company becomes sustainable until their business processes become sustainable. So really embed sustainability metrics into the core ERP, into the business process themselves, and then ensure that sustainability is a fundamental part of the decision making and the operations. So then look into kind of the entire value chain, right? When you implement sustainability initiatives, that includes engaging with stakeholders. We talked about suppliers, your customers might talk to you if you're their suppliers, with partners to really drive change, achieve the sustainability goals. And then ultimately establish a system, right, a management system, which ensures the compliance, which looks into the different standards, really helps you to define actions, to define targets, so that you can show continuous improvement in your sustainability metrics.
Yeah.
That should also include risk identification, regulatory assessments, and general alignment with your sustainability goals. So I
Yeah.
think if we can kind of look into all of these issues, or a few of them at least, that would kind of really help you to move towards a more sustainable company.
Thank you. Any final message? And Mr. Menon, if you have any question, do let me know so you can ask.
Yes, Harsha, thank you. I have two questions, if it is okay. Good evening, Christian Bertlaff. Thank you so much for your wonderful session. So my first question is the SAP deliverables on sustainability, which you explained. This comes under, is it coming under the product called SAP Sustainability Control Tower?
So we have a variety of solutions, the control tower being one of them, which really kind of helps you with the overall, I talked about the management system. So the overall, we call it holistic steering, and then ultimately also the reporting, and maybe kind of even like the external disclosure of sustainability metrics. But below that, there are a lot of, as I said earlier, there are a lot of different aspects of sustainability, right? So there are a lot of different solutions which SAP provides to support all those different aspects. So whether it's about environmental health and safety, whether it's about product compliance, right? So making sure that your products don't contain certain ingredients which are maybe dangerous or which cannot be sold in certain countries. Companies have been fined because of, they sell a finished product into a certain market, and then they figure out that it has an ingredient which is not allowed, or which needs to be at least declared. So making sure that this becomes visible. Then of course, carbon management, right? Scope 1, 2, 3, all scope items, is from organizational, but also from a product perspective. And then the packaging, EPR rules. So all of this, we have different modules supporting all of these different aspects of sustainability, so to say. And then what you were referring to, the control tower, is kind of an overarching tool, which really kind of brings all the metrics and KPIs to really kind of have a holistic visibility of all the different areas.
Thank you. If time permits, I have one extended question on the same. Do you customize this control tower and the other deliverables under that through your SAP implementation partner? Like, for example, there could be some customization, regional focus required, like Harsha mentioned. Like in India, we have a reporting standard called BRSR,
Yeah.
Business Responsibility, reporting standard. So is the customization done by your implementation partner, or it comes from SAP directly?
So first of all, the control tower has over like 800 or so metrics, which we deliver out of the box. However, they are very much driven by CSRD. So you probably see a lot of overlap between those metrics and the India regulation requirement. But we do have the tool also has like an extension framework. So we actually have a partner who has built an extension specifically for BSRF for India,
BRSR.
which basically can be, if you engage with the partner, they would have that and could apply that right away. I think you can buy that on the SAP store. So to answer your question, right? So there's a broad, big list of metrics already available. Then there's the ability to configure your own custom metrics, but then there is additional standard content from partners already available, which can be purchased to support specific regulations in specific countries and regions.
Thank you so much. And one last question. When you say AI, is it predictive AI or generative AI, or is it a combination of both?
It depends on the use case, right? So we use all kind of different tools based on the use case. So give you an example, predictive AI might be, I talked about predictive maintenance, right? So that where I predict that a certain machine needs maintenance. Gen AI we also use in the tool. So for example, for creating a final sustainability report, right? Which uses all the metrics and all the data we have in the tool, which we have collected, which we monitor. But then we also need maybe external facing sustainability report, whether it's or actually even some report which is very specific to a regulation, right? Like CSRD. So we use Gen AI to support the creation of these reports, for example.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
If you want, Mr. Vinod, I can connect you with Christian over the mail.
Absolutely. Yes, please.
I would love
do
to.
so.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you. I would like
You're
to.
welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vinod, for the question. And thank you, Christian, for being patiently answering all my question and Vinod's question. And I'm sure, so the best way to connect with you is on LinkedIn as well.
Yeah, anyone is open to connect with me on LinkedIn, but if you have the correct questions, you can connect. You can probably reach me through Harsher or directly through LinkedIn.
Needful. Thank you so much, Christian, for your time and sharing all the important information that we need to know on sustainability and AI and supply chain.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.